everybody. Hello. Oof, God. How are you doing? It's great to see you. It's Tuesday night, and it's Quilt Nerd, and yeah. I've had such a great day. Today was a really good day, and lots of things were accomplished. Was everything accomplished that I wanted to get done? Of course not, but many things were done. I was focused, mostly. I was excited. I feel very lucky, I feel very grateful. I walk around pretty grateful in the world. I get to do cool things, I get to talk to cool people, such as yourselves. I get to work with people such as yourselves. The relationships that Quilt Nerd has borne, not just with me in my life, but in so many people's lives who watch this show and who subscribe to the show. And God bless you. God bless you for subscribing. I appreciate it. It helps me make the donuts. You know what I mean? So, and it's just great because, it takes a lot to make this show and a lot goes into it. But the truth is I'm a terrible salesperson because, I get a lot out of it, that's not monetary. So I can't do the hard sell. But, wow, why am I saying that? Robin, are you watching? Can you tell people to please subscribe to the show? Anyway, so I'm in a good mood. I'm in a really great mood. And I'm also always happier than I ever was before when I was doing this show without Stephanie Cake. I am always in a better mood doing this show because you're here. Stephanie Cake, how are you doing? I'm telling you, it's a whole new world. When did you start? When were you on the first time? I got to write that down.
I think it was June or July.
June or July. Okay. Yep.
Something like that. Yeah,
yep.
Maybe
okay.
June.
Okay. We got to find out. Marcia would know.
So y'all, Robin says, please subscribe.
Okay, good. Thank you, Robin. Yes, do what Robin says. Okay. When did Cake start? Okay, so Stephanie Cake, how are you doing? You're the co-producer. You are Jill of all trades. When did Cake start? How are you doing? How was your day?
I'm doing well. It was a good day. It was a productive day. I did spend it reading things like Dutton's Reconstruction Manual, which I'll talk about during the cake break. But it's a little mind-numbing, so I'm a little fuzzy around the edges.
That's cool. Yeah, it's Tuesday, Yeah, we've got a long way to go. Miles before we sleep, before the week is over. But I know that you're all doing fascinating things. Marcia, look, M. Hicks is going to look it up. She's going to look it up, and she knows. She knows the first day Stephanie Cake came on the show to help me out. Hey, babe. Padma's here. It's so good to see you. Penny Catherine, hi. The Wonky Quilter, hello. It's good to see you. Oh, yeah, and Robin's got a really good message to share, which I will mention also. It's great to see you, Quack Quack Cat. And Myra's here. And Jill's here. Jill, got your email? That sounds good. I will reply. Oh, babe called me gorgeous. Wow. Susan Sparks Michael has shared the stream. That's a good idea. Everyone should share the stream. How would you do it? I don't know. But I'm sure that you can figure it out because you're very smart and good looking. So let's see. Babe, it's so good to see you. I'm going to do a co-working stream soon. Maybe Friday. I didn't decide that yet, but here's the deal. Carrie Dell, who is the executive director of AQSG, who's great and is doing great things in that organization. She had surgery today, and she, I don't, she's going to be, it's good. It's sort of a routine thing. But anyway, she is going to be recovering. And she said, I'd love to see a co-working stream soon. And I was like, well, if we do a co-working stream this week or next week for sure, she could, have a little company while she convalesces. So I will schedule that. Probably Friday, but I don't want to do it under pressure. Because what if I have to do, I don't know, pressure-filled things? Then what a crack up. Jan is here. It's great to see you too. Raffle, hi. I hope you can hang for a while. Victorious Mouse. Why do I want to call you that? I don't know. But Victorious Simmer. I don't know. Victorious. You're victorious. Indeed. Of course you are. And so Neflinster's here and Mother Nature. Fiendor coming in with the music and Mod Art Quilt. I think you're famous. Are you I think you are. If you're not, you probably just laughed really loudly. But I think that you are. I think someone told me that you're kind of a big deal, I apologize. I should have made all kinds of notes for tonight because there's a million things I want to talk about and I want to say hello to you. But I'm pretty sure someone said that you're you're a person of consequence, you know? I mean, everybody is in their way, but I think you make quilts that are, anyway, I'll find out. I'll ask the person who talked to me about it, or who mentioned it in passing. Joyous Fibers, it's good to see you. It's so good to see you. Texas Farm Gal, Earth Girl Now, Jacob Jellies. Oh my God, I love everybody so much. And anybody who's going to come on and watch from YouTube and Facebook, if you're out there, I appreciate you too. Come over to Twitch. It's where the fun is. It's where we like do all the goofy stuff, you know, like the emotes and the giveaways and all that kind of good stuff. It's good. We have to be different around here. I mean, nerds usually are, right? So tonight is such a good show. I have so many things to share with you, so many things to talk about. I've got a little bit of wine. I've got some chips. Basically, it's time to do this. So let's do it. I'm your host, Mary Fonz, and we don't talk about how to make quilts here. On Quilt Nerd, we talk about them, and we talk about what they mean and what they do and their role in culture. And tonight in particular, you know, we're going to see quilts out in culture because one of the things, well, we're going to listen to a little piece on NPR that my younger sister sent me about a quilt, and that took me into mass media stuff, right? Quilts in the mass media. So I went into the Washington Post. Eric has I shouldn't talk, he has a subscription. When he worked for the government some years ago, he got a subscription to the Washington Post, and you get a free one when you work for the government. But he never, you know, he doesn't work there anymore, but he still has it anyway. So okay. Oh God, maybe he's gonna be mad. I might have legitimately made him mad. Anyway, let's move on. I can cut it out, you know? The internet isn't forever. I can just totally cut that out. Anyway, so I went on the Washington Post website and I found some really interesting articles about quilts that have appeared there. And then, yeah, I just found some really, really interesting things like in the newspapers and things about quilts. And so we don't just find quilts in our guilds and in books about how to quilt or even quilt history books. Quilts are out in the world, and hey Mary, quilts are out in the world and they do things, and I like that. I like that about them. And if we're arguing about different elements of quilts, or we're arguing about what quilts should be or what they should not be, that's good, because it means that the art form is dynamic and it's changing and it's alive. When people don't talk about quilts or they don't do articles in newspapers about them, then we have problems. But fortunately, I think this show will be on forever, as long as people subscribe and support the show. And so I can keep doing it and justify the time I spend on it. It's all justified. But yeah, if this show, you know, continues, it's because there's so much to say about quilts. And as you'll see tonight, the things that we look at, we're going to visit Detroit tonight. We're going to visit Detroit decades ago, because a quilt that's featured on this NPR segment, which is 3 minutes, and we'll listen to it together. I learned something about America that I never knew. I learned something about Detroit that I never knew, and it all starts with a quilt. So it's a pretty cool way to learn about the world, is if you look at quilts, you know? That's what I'm talking about. Oh no! I have the wrong intro quilt behind me. That's wild. It's not supposed to be that. Look at this. It's supposed to be this. What a crack up. Yeah, that quilt behind me was beautiful. It's a Bertha Mexroth quilt, but I'm not going to talk about Bertha tonight. No. This was supposed to be the intro quilt, and the intro quilt changes every single show. I don't know. It's happened when I got a green screen, and I think it's a great way to start the show, because quilts are visual. And then the last thing I'm going to say about the show, and then I'll talk about the quilt. But the thing is that I really like about live streaming, and the reason that I think it's a really great format for a show about quilts, it's visual. You know, we love the podcasts. The podcasts are great. We need the podcasts. But quilts are, you know, you look at them, you know, it's not a think piece, you know, around here. We look at things. And so this live stream thing to me is it's the perfect format for this kind of content. And I started the show because I wanted to share my research. I look at such cool stuff, and so do you. You look at amazing things too. And so in this kind of environment, we can look at the things we're talking about, you know, and we can share the things we're thinking about and look at them. So, all right. So let's talk about this quilt. What is this thing? What is this thing? Yes, Eat Your Coat. Good evening to you. Jill says I look like I'm in an episode of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I loved that show. BT dubs. Okay, let me get small. Help, I'm small. Okay, So this, let me get you the full Monty here. So this quilt I have had in my folder to share with you for a long time, and I'll show you the full thing, and then I'll do an announcement about a week from tonight. We have a very special show a week from tonight. Here's the quilt. Like I said, I'm going to zoom in on this and show you lots of details, but take a look at the whole thing. I mean, I feel, well, I don't know, because I have a big monitor that I'm looking at, the second monitor, and I always hope that, when I make the thing small, that you can get at least a sense of how the quilt looks in the full version of it before I zoom in. Anyway, I'll leave that to you. So this is a quilt that has been, ready for the show for a while, but just hasn't been right until tonight. This is a quilt that was featured in the Oklahoman paper, in 2015. And the headline for this particular confection is "Quilt with Oklahoma Ties to be Auctioned." And that's ties to Oklahoma, not like ties for the quilt. So Matt Patterson wrote an article about this quilt, and I'm going to read it to you. February 1st, 2015. Wet from the Oklahoman, okay? Wes Cohen, actually, hold on. I found another picture that was not in this article, but I do the work for you. I do the footwork, and I found a picture of the woman who made it. Oh yeah, that's right. This is the woman who made it. Is it that quilt? It is not. But this isn't. This is Camille. This is Camille Phelan. Phelan. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Your code, exactly. Hey Kay. Hey Eva. So this is the lady who made it, and so we're going to read a little bit more about her. But let's take a look at the quilt. Okay. Yep. So here we go. Matt Patterson talking about this. Wes Cohen has seen his share of interesting quilts during his career as an antiques appraiser and folk art expert, but he hasn't seen anything quite like the one made by Oklahoman Camille Phelan. I mean, Phelan. Phelan. Phelan, right? Phelan was known for her Oklahoma history quilt. Let's get into this, which depicts the state's history. The quilt is intricate and features many historical figures from the state's history, along with some famous places. The quilt Cohen will auction off on February 21st, and remember, this is 2015. There's so much to see. I don't know where to start with you all. The quilt Cohen will auction off on February 21st is similar in detail, but with a theme centered around U.S. history. The quilt was finished in the 1930s. Phelan died in 1946. Dee Dee Brucker. Phelan. Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you, Dee Dee. You get a little toot. Yes, okay. Phelan. I can enlarge Maryland 1,000%. So let me work my way down there. Okay, so this is interesting because, this show is an exploration, not a presentation. So I learn along with you. I don't screen all of the stuff. Well, I prep, but I don't read everything ahead of time because I want to learn along with you. So what I'm starting to put together is that maybe this is the quilt Camille Phelan was famous for. This Oklahoma, well, I don't know. Anyway, okay, let's go back. So it's centered around U.S. history. The quilt was finished in the 1930s, this particular quilt, and Phelan died in 1946. Okay. Cohen has been an appraiser on Antiques Roadshow and History Detectives. He runs Wes Cohen auctions in Cincinnati when he's not on TV. It really blew my mind, Cohen said. This quilt had been lost since it was made. Wow, and didn't resurface until 1983 at an auction in New York. From the look of it, the family just put it away in a box. It's a masterpiece. I think I gotta get in closer. I mean, the detail is so crazy. Cohen said that Phelan made 4 quilts. Okay, one has disappeared, while others are owned by the Oklahoma Historical Society. Cohen said the level of detail and its colors are what make it stand out as a nearly flawless example of American folk art. He said, quote, "There are the state capitals of all 48 states that were in the Union at the time," Cohen said. "Every state flower is there. There are 150 historical figures, including Will Rogers and many national landmarks. She even has Alaska represented, foreshadowing that it would be part of the United States. It's a remarkable piece of folk art." Did I land on Maryland? Oh, almost. Almost. I was like, not looking. Yeah, cake, yeah.
It's underneath the chat. There it is.
Thank you. Yes, underneath the chat. Okay, great. I was like driving the picture and also reading, and I was like, I think I'm going in the direction of Maryland. Okay, here we go. Okay, a little bit more. Cohen said the quilt fetched about $10,000 in the last auction. In its last auction more than 30 years ago. He expects it could bring in as much as $15,000 to $25,000 this time around. Let's zoom out a little bit here. He said, quote, "Folk art collectors will be interested in it, and so will quilt collectors. And someone who is interested in Oklahoma history could also bid on it. What would really be great is if somehow it found its way back to Oklahoma." Hear, hear. I hope it did. Naval heroes. Wow. I mean, this thing is wild.
So do we know, like, what the construction is? Because I can't I mean, is it embroidery? Is it painted? I'm kind of wondering, are these things, like, are they maybe drawn with India ink? And
I know. I mean, so when I first saw it, I thought it was a carpet. Like, I thought it was, like, French knots or something, you know? Because this, I mean, that really looks like it, right? The photograph isn't great. It's like, I don't know, what is it? It's like 700-800, you know, by something else, which is pretty bad when you're looking at for detail. So I thought maybe it was this tied carpet kind of deal, like a tapestry. But if you look at the background behind these
you
guys,
can see the lines of the quilting.
It's totally quilted. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
it's just impossible to tell. Like, to me, that could be anything.
I know.
Could be, this could be like stitched on and then like outlined and embroidery.
Look, the flowers look embroidered. I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. Like, it just totally looks embroidered to me. So, and the faces, I wish they said. I wish they said, but they don't.
Yeah, I would love to see this in person.
Same.
And really get up close and see what it looks like.
You know what's interesting? If anybody wanted to really look into this, you could email Wes Cohen. I mean, I know we have Oklahomans in here. Lisa is an Oklahoman. Who else? I think somebody else. But anyway, Wes Cohen Antiques. Is that what his thing is? You could say, "Hi, I saw a quilt. I read about your thing." And you could ask him about it. And that would be great. If you do that, please let us know, and we will feature the response on the show, because I really would like to know. This thing is wild. Let me just give you the whole thing. I mean, and it looks shiny too. Like, look at what is up with the border? I'm sorry, that's not quilted. That's something. It's embroidery, right? I don't know. It's hard to say. It really is hard. Wonky says
it really does kind of look dense like embroidery, but that also could be quilting lines and then shadows, you know?
It's weird. So let's look at this, and I can read to you a little bit about Camille Phelan, because I found a little bit more about her, and then we'll move on. So the Oklahoma Historical Society, this is in the Encyclopedia of Oklahoma History and Culture, and they have an entry for Camille Nixdorf Phelan, born in 1882, died in 1946. They say, known as the designer and maker of the Oklahoma History Quilt, which I think this is it. I think this is the Oklahoma History Quilt. Camille Nixdorf, hello Camille, the only child of her parents, born at Pleasant Farm in Miller County. Oh, she was born on Pleasant Farm in Missouri. Shortly after Camille's birth, her mother died, and she was sent to live with her aunt in St. Elizabeth. Okay, many details about her life. That's great. She moved to Oklahoma City in 1901 after marrying Mr. Phelan, Dr. Phelan. Okay, so like other women of her social station, Camille enjoyed ornamental needlework and joined sewing clubs. Around 1927, she decided to make a quilt portraying Oklahoma history from 1541, the year Francisco Vasquez de Coronado's expedition through the present Oklahoma Panhandle happened, to about 1931. She spent 2 years researching the state's history, selecting prominent Oklahomans and events to be sketched on 54 quilt blocks. She worked for 4 years, stitching the outlines of the drawings with black silk thread and embroidering the details in pastel colors. After exhibiting her quilt at the 1933 Chicago World's Fair, interesting. Man, that thing was a big deal, that whole thing. Phelan donated it to the Oklahoma Historical Society in 1935. Before her death, she was president of the Clara Barton chapter of the Oklahoma City Red Cross. Okay, cool. So now we know a little bit more. Yeah. You wonder if she was a teacher. It doesn't say that she was. She attended the St. Joseph Academy in St. Louis, where she developed her talents in art. That's cool. Pretty neat, right? And yeah, this is the Oklahoma history quilt, right? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why I thought it was, yeah, okay. It all makes sense now. So there you go. There's our intro quilt. Good stuff. And yeah, it's embroidered. And I think there's some quilting in it, like, deep in there. But yeah, it's all embroidery. Wow. Look at what you learn when you read together. Okay, cool. So here is what I want to do next. Thank you, Camille. Next week, a week from Tuesday, let me hide the chat real quick. A week from today, it's the Quilt Nerds on Parade show. We do it once a quarter, and it's really fun. It's like, hey, Jovita, hi. We do a show where we look at what you're making, and there's a limit to how many people can send in their projects and things because, sometimes the show, it goes long. A lot of times lately we've put it into 2 episodes because there's so much to say about the stuff you're working on, and it's a really fun time. So can you tell me, Kate, what did you learn from Robin? How are we doing on, do we have any room left in the show?
We still have room.
Okay,
so
great.
Get them in there, guys.
Great. So yeah, and so you'll have information from Robin about how to submit, right? Right? All right. Hey, Kenny.
And there's no theme on this one. This one was really just showing your work, getting some feedback from Nan.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right. Because Hannah, my sister Hannah, is going to be on the show. That's Hannah right there. And me long ago. Sorry. And so Hannah's going to be on the show next week. She is awesome. If you've been watching the show, you know Hannah, and she hasn't been on in a little while. So my big sister Hannah and I will be looking at your work, and we'll look at it together. And it's not a critique. It's more like, just a good time. It's nothing. It's nothing you have to be afraid of.
Hannah will tell you everything she loves about your quilt.
Yeah, exactly. And I will do the same. So yeah. So send in your stuff. The deadline is when? Oh yeah, there's a pinned post at the top of the Twitch stream here. Robin's got the info for you. So cool. All right. So that's next Tuesday. All right. So let's get into this. Here's what I'm gonna do first. Okay. Let's see. Interesting. There's 3 different stories, and they're all really cool. Let's do this first. This is pretty touching. So I told you that I went into the Washington Post. I went into the New York Times too, but I dipped out of the New York Times. The Washington Post had so much quilt content, and the reason I started there is because Eric, people send you things when they know you're a quilt nerd. Quilt nerds send things, and also my family does. So my younger sister sent me the NPR story that we're going to listen to here in a minute, and Eric sent me a story about Avis Collins Robinson, and she has a quilt in the Washington Post from yesterday. So we're going to look at it, and she's really interesting. Some of you might know her. Do you know that name, Avis Collins Robinson?
No, I was just looking at the links you sent me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Kate's gonna post links in here as I go through the stories. But she's so interesting, and so we're gonna look at the quilt that's in WAPO from yesterday. But first, this is a story from 2021. Let me get back on the screen here and put the chat back up. from 2021, and it's really, it's really affecting. Hang on one second. It's about some prisoners who were doing. Yeah, let me open that up just a second. Prisoners who were doing quilt making while they were incarcerated, and maybe still are doing that. Okay, so let's read about it. So this is by Kathy Free. It was published in in 2021, August 18th. And the headline is, "For hours each day, these prison inmates make personalized quilts for children in foster care." It's pretty cool. So Kathy writes, Fred Brown was 25 years into a 15 years to life prison sentence when he discovered that he enjoyed cutting out fabric squares of princesses and Care Bears and sewing them into quilts. Oh my God. There's a lot of pictures in this article too, which is great. Look at the stash. The stash, man. It's so great. Okay. And by the way, the caption, the pictures I'm going to show you may not like directly line up with the people who are speaking in the article, because I kind of arranged them in order of kind of how the story would best be told. Anyway, so if you want to see the article, we can get the link to it too. So he said, "When I was a kid in Chicago, my mom sewed drapes, but I never thought of sewing as something I'd want to do myself," said Brown, 66, an inmate at the South Central Correctional Center in Licking, Missouri. As he started quilting in the Correctional Center's sewing room, he was struck by a newfound respect for the craft. He said, quote, "I learned quickly that women who have sewn all their lives are mathematical geniuses. It takes a lot of math to calculate your seam allowances. And the angles and the circles, there's a lot that goes into it," unquote. Brown is serving time for armed kidnapping and rape. And he said he began sewing 4 years ago when he heard about a small group of inmates who gathered daily in South Central's sewing room to volunteer to make quilts for charitable organizations and children in foster homes. He said, quote, "When I learned that I could help bring a smile to a child's face, I was all in. Right now, I'm working on a puppy quilt that will go to a 13-year-old. I don't know anything about him, but I have a feeling he's going to love this quilt." That's amazing. Okay, there's more to it. One second. Brown's latest creation is among more than 2,000 quilts. There's another guy here that have been made by inmates from fabric donated to the prison in the last decade, said Joe Satterfield, a prison case manager at South Central who oversees the program. Joe Satterfield, okay? The Prison Quilting Circle started about 10 years ago as a way for inmates to contribute to the community around them. Men who come to the sewing room each morning generally work on 2 projects. They design quilts that can be auctioned by local charities at fundraisers, and they sew personalized birthday quilts for foster children in Texas County, Missouri, where the prison is located. Satterfield, 42, said, quote, "They especially love making something for kids who might have nothing. Social service caseworkers in the area provide us with the kids' first names and birthdays, and the guys do the rest." Wow, unquote. The men appreciate that sewing. Yeah, Kate, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, I actually had read something else about this particular program, and the fact that the work they're doing for kids in foster care is really, really meaningful to them, because a lot of them came out of the foster care system. Yeah, I read a story about it, like, it literally, like, I don't cry, and it made me cry, because I was like, oh my God.
Right.
You know, like, that's the bringing the humanness back into a person, and, you know, an offender.
Yeah, absolutely. Do they have a website? Could you look around and see? Because if somebody wanted to donate fabric or, you know, yeah, that's great. It's when there's any inmate program where people are making quilts. I mean, it's like, and that they're guys, you know, and like doing this. And I love the first person was like, yeah, it's really hard. Some of this math is really hard. I love that. The humanity in that, right? So, yeah, the men appreciate that sewing is something positive they can do while they're serving their sentences, Satterfield said. Most of the men who participate in the program are fathers, he said. And more than a few have known the uncertainty of growing up in foster care, just like you said, just like Cake said. Exactly. Satterfield said they can relate because they've been there. It gives them comfort and satisfaction to know that a quilt they made is going to a child who may not get another birthday present. South Central's 1,580 inmates can also volunteer to put together hygiene kits for foster kids or make teddy bears and stocking hats. But the quilting project especially requires a sense of commitment, Satterfield explained. He said, quote, "From start to finish, they have to see each quilt through. You can really see a change in attitude with the guys after they've been doing this for a while. There's a sense of community and pride," unquote. William White was a few weeks into a 25-year prison sentence for 2 counts of first-degree assault in 2015 when he learned about the prison's sewing room. Look at this quilt. It's so great. Route 66. It's so great. Look at those cars. I'm very impressed by this. I think this looks really great. Raffle. It's so cool. Okay, so William White once ran an upholstery business in St. Louis and thought that pitching in on sewing projects might help the days pass faster. Well done. When we're sewing, when people are sewing, it's like the day flies by, the night flies by if you're staying up all night making quilts. It's crazy how fast it goes. When he saw firsthand what the men were doing in the sewing room, he said he felt a new sense of purpose. This sewing room is way more space than I have whenever I'm doing something. I mean, I'm not trying to be flip. I know they're incarcerated, but I mean, it's pretty good. White said, quote, "The guys were making these beautiful quilts to give away to foster kids, and I knew it was something I wanted to be a part of. I have 6 kids, and sewing has always been my passion. Sewing has always been my passion. And now here was a way for me to give back," unquote. Love that. White said he spends nearly 7 hours every weekday. Hey, Christy. Christy Hughes, everybody. Oh, my God. Christy Hughes of Christy's Sewing Boutique in Connecticut. Christy, God bless you, girl. Thanks for tuning in. Anyway, so back to this. Sorry. White said, "I have 6 kids, and sewing has always been my passion. And now here was a way for me to give back." White says he spends, I said that, 7 hours every weekday designing and sewing birthday quilts for children after he's finished with his shift as a prep cook from 2:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Wow. He says, "I don't need much sleep, and besides, I'd rather be doing something for a child who needs it. Even though I'm incarcerated," White said, "I can still do something beautiful." For Richard Sanders, sitting behind a sewing machine taught him how to slow down and think about his life, he said. After Sanders was sentenced in 1979 to life without parole in a robbery and 2 murders in St. Louis, he said it took years for him to realize that he needed to look inside himself and make some changes. He said, quote, "I was young and stubborn and wanted to keep to myself. But as I grew older, I decided I had to stop blaming others and do something to help make up for what I did." Sanders, now 62, said he didn't know a top stitch from a straight stitch when he first stepped into the sewing room at another Missouri prison about 20 years ago. But he signed up for sewing classes and was eventually put to work making prison guard uniforms. When he was transferred to South Central in 2015, he said he was asked by another inmate if he could come down to the sewing room to help fix a broken machine. He said, quote, "After I fixed it, a couple of guys talked me into trying it out, and pretty soon I was sewing a quilt. I learned something new about myself. I really like making quilts. And inside this room, there's a peaceful environment," unquote. In recent years, Sanders estimated that he's sewn several hundred quilts, including one with a farm machinery theme, and several that are covered with high school mascots. After he's finished with each one, he snaps a photo and mails it to his mother, he said. "When I was a boy, I used to watch my grandma sew," Sanders said. "She'd make something from nothing all the time. She'd get a design in her mind and just start sewing, pretty much like I do today." Sanders shares his creative skills with other inmates and encourages them to come up with new ideas. "Making birthday quilts for these kids is the most meaningful thing I've done since I've been in prison. It makes me feel better about why I'm here." Yeah, there you go. It's a great story, right? Isn't that good? Yeah.
So the film about this, Quilters in Prison, Restorative Justice in Action.
Really?
Yes, I posted the link. It's the Quilting Daily link, because it has information at the bottom about if you wanted to donate to the program.
Awesome.
But the woman who's doing the film, Jennifer McShane, it doesn't sound like it's done yet, but she is the one who did Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. And I don't know if anybody's seen that.
No.
It's on HBO. It is the most incredible documentary.
What's it called? What's it called again?
It's called Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. And they're in a community where if somebody is disturbing the peace and, are doing something unacceptable in public, I guess.
Yeah.
And generally it's obvious that it's either drug related or mental health related. They'll send these guys out instead of the cops.
Yeah,
because these guys are specially trained to deal with people who are like having a crisis or people who shouldn't just be like thrown in the drunk tank.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
right.
So it looks like this is like her game plan, is to do these documentaries about stuff that's making a difference in the world, in areas where people, I think, often think a difference can be made.
Exactly. Yeah. That's that kind of person, I think, is, like, that's who's going to save us all, who recognizes that a lot of times people don't need punishment. They need like understanding and someone to listen to them. There's another documentary by the guy who made Hoop Dreams. I can't think of his name right now, but The Interrupters, a similar thing where, these people go in and they're in Chicago and they try to talk people down from violence, right in the middle of it. It's fascinating. It's an amazing documentary. But I just wrote that down. Hey, Angelina. Hey, and Solyn. Hi. And Beverly. Hi. So Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. I wrote it down. That sounds really, really good. Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a news story, right? And that's what tonight's show is that I went into the news and I found some really wonderful stuff. So let's look at another story. And this is what inspired it all. Check out this awesome quilt. This is really great. This was featured in the Washington Post yesterday. And by the way, just for the record, I am annoyed by all of politics and all of the media. Okay? Equally. I hate everyone equally. I don't like it. I don't read the Washington Post like regularly. I don't read the New York Times. I don't read the Wall Street Journal. I have Eric tell me what's happening, okay? And I don't mean to sound like, a nitwit or like a ditz, and I vote, okay? But like, I vote because I ask Eric what's going on and he tells me, and I trust him with my life, okay? So he looks at Twitter and he does all the stuff, and then, and then I get angry about something and he's like, well, you should know this. And so then we're not, I'm not telling you how great the Washington Post is. This is my source today. Sometimes I want to say that because Quilt Nerd's for everybody, man. We're fearless in our investigations. We go everywhere, including the Washington Post. Okay. So this quilt, I'm going to zoom in. It's really beautiful and very interesting. Let everybody
remember that the Washington Post is owned by the same guy who owns the company that owns this company.
Oh my God, you're right. Oh no. Oh my God, you're right.
Twitch and Amazon and Bezos and WAPO, It's all the same.
You're right. What if either one of two things is going to happen? Either big men in suits will come and just carry me away, and you, because they know where you are, obviously, because we're on a Zoom call, and either that or we'll just get like a ton of subscriptions. You see, Cindy, are you working for Jeff Bezos? Interesting timing, Cindy. I'm kidding. Yeah, exactly. So thanks for liking the stream, everybody, and thanks for watching tonight. Okay, Jacob Jellies, Amy Pabst. I think you're also a big deal. I know you are. Anyway, so Mademoiselle Larry, good evening, our friend in France. So here we go. This quilt. Let's get back to this now. Stop goofing around. This quilt was made by Avis Collins Robinson. And we'll look at the full quilt again, but I want to stay close on it as I read you what she wrote in the opinion. So this is in the opinion section of the Washington Post, written yesterday, and the sort of, it says sowing the seasons. And then the headline that Ms. Robinson wrote is, "My spring quilt is a patchwork of history, memory, and hope." So this quilt is called, hold on, this is called Spring, okay? Spring. And it says sowing the season. So what I think is that perhaps she's making a quilt for each season. Interesting. But I haven't read this yet. I'm reading it with you. Let's read. Avis Collins Robinson writes, abstraction in visual art is built from color, line, form, and perspective. It also grows out of an artist's lived experience. My experience as a Black woman in America is precious to me because it is the sum of the lives and struggles of my ancestors, men and women who refused to be defeated, no matter how hard America tried. Sometimes this history is clearly legible, in jagged lines, sharp angles, or dissonant colors. Sometimes it is subtle, like a whisper. When I visualize springtime, I see reawakened lawns, tender new foliage, and the sunlit sky. I grew up outside Washington, so my mind's eye sees the white and pink explosion of cherry blossoms around the tidal basin and Washington Monument. But I also see the stabs of pain and injustice that the hopeful season has brought to this city. In my quilt called Spring, good overcomes evil, and love defies death. I think of the Black men of my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, whom President Woodrow Wilson attempted to put in their place by bringing strict segregation to Washington for the first time in decades. The Ku Klux Klan, happy with the changes, held huge rallies here in the 1920s. I think of my best friend's mother, Miss Lucille Foster, who told me of the time in the 1940s when she saw a pretty Easter dress in the window of Garfinkel's department store, which African Americans were not allowed to enter. She had to give the money to her white employer, who went in and made the purchase. I think of how Black neighborhoods were left off the bus routes when the schools were finally desegregated in the 1960s. I think of how generations of officials turned a blind eye when Black families were consigned to substandard housing and robbed of the opportunity to build equity and accumulate wealth. In creating this piece, I wanted to create an irregular, faceted, surprising space made up of contrasting colors and textures to lift it off a flat, two-dimensional plane. This required changing the way I work. Usually, my technique is improvisational. I begin a quilt with an idea of what the final product will look like, but not with an inflexible plan. I let the fabric's colors and textures tell me how they want to fit together. To produce the new effects I was after, I needed to find a way to plan the piece in detail without losing the feeling of spontaneity. First, I created a sketch of the design. The next step was to make a more fully realized painting. Wow, so interesting. Which I used to create a pattern. Then I chose fabrics for their color and texture. Some of my choices, such as silk and velvet, are difficult to work with because they stretch and skew. I cut dozens of pieces, equally uniquely sized and shaped, and stitched them together. With this season's project for the Post, which will continue through the year with summer, fall, and winter, wha-boom! Awesome. I hope to explore new directions while also honoring the centuries-old traditions of African American fabric art. Traditionally, Black quilters relied on found fabrics, used clothing, and household linens, pieces of older, worn-out quilts that held meanings for the artists that stretched beyond the utilitarian and the aesthetic. In Spring, I incorporate a piece of the nightgown that my mother Annie, Ruth Collins, wore when she stayed at our house in the months before her death. And that's Spring by Avis Collins Robinson. I keep doing that, 2023. And I know that this is the nightgown piece. Really, really wonderful. Yes, Angelina says, I'm trying to wrap my head around the construction. It's whoa. Yeah, 1,000%. Okay, first of all, we ought to let Avis know that we feature the quilt, and that we're going to do it every time. I mean, if you're an Instagram person or if you're a tweeting person, send her the link. I mean, Ms. Robinson, This is really beautiful. And let me read, while you're watching, let me read a really great bio about you. Here's a little bit more about Avis Collins Robinson. I'm so excited that there's going to be 4 quilts. That's so great. Look, quilts are in the news, man. They're in the Washington Post, and the Washington Post is like, they're so important, and this artist is so significant that we're going to do a 4-piece series in our expensive pages. Right? And now Jeff Bezos is getting double dip on the content because my show is featuring the quilt. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying it makes good business sense, Jeff. Okay, so here's a little bit about Avis Collins Robertson. Avis Collins Robertson is a visual artist best known for her paintings and abstract quilts that explore America's deep-seated, often unacknowledged tensions over race, gender, oppression, and history. Her work portrays, both directly and metaphorically, the richness of African American life and the deep, layered meanings of a simple word, soul. Her portraits invite the viewer to look into her subjects' souls and experience our common humanity. Her quilted fabric works are imbued not just with striking color and form, but with history and emotion as well. Using the rich traditions of African American quilt making as a foundation, she has developed a new visual language, sometimes with deceptive simplicity, masking great complexity. I think we're seeing that right here, right? Sometimes so jam-packed with energy that the pieces of fabric almost seem to be in motion, always overflowing with soul. Like W.E.B. Du Bois. I always do it. I always screw it up. It's so embarrassing. She uses the concept of soul to convey the universal nature of the human struggle. Joys and sorrows, the satisfaction of accomplishment, the comfort of family, and the persistent resonance of history. Yeah, that's Avis Collins Robinson. And we're going to look at a few other things by Avis Robinson because, I had to know more, right? So I was looking into it. And you know what, Angelina, you pointed it out. This is an intense piece, right? Because it's not, you can see that there's, I don't know, like there's pieces that look like pattern pieces, like this seems to be something very specific, right, Kate? I always look to you because you're really good at sewing things.
Well, I think that's, I think Kenny just said it's kind of a little bit like a crazy quilt, but I think what would differentiate this type of quilting is that this is improvisational quilting is just a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like those black and white claw marks.
Yeah.
The skinny triangle.
Sure.
Like that, I think that would have been pieced, even though it's improvisationally, it was definitely pieced to look like that.
Yeah.
And then, then she's chosen the other pieces. But I'm always thinking of Cheryl Lynn Miller whenever I see improvisation like this, because she does a lot of that kind of rounded stuff, but it kind of has a process that I think a lot of improvisational quilters use, like when they're laying stuff out.
Yeah. And Babe, you said it, on paper, then a painting, then the quilt. What a pattern. Exactly. So she's got these different layers of the process. Yeah. It's gorgeous. I'm so excited to see Summer. Summer will be next, so maybe I'll put like an alert, like a Google alert, to make sure that we catch it when the next quilt is up. That's so great. And here is the artist now. And I'm going to read to you a little bit from an article in Arlington Magazine from 2013 by Madeline Rosenberg, as we look just at a couple other images of Avis Collins Robinson's work. So 2013, this is called Portraits of the Artist. In Avis Collins Robinson's work and life, there are common threads. Her mother always called her the family historian. It's a title that Avis Collins Robinson embraced and expanded. As a child, she listened to family stories and drew pictures. As an adult, she began collecting artifacts from U.S. slave history and the struggle for civil rights. Then, as an artist, she began reinterpreting these objects and themes in a palette of purple, green, and raw umber, and with a needle and thread. This is great. So this is a pain. Okay, yeah, this is one of her quilts here. Okay, Robinson calls it remembering, seeing her mother let's see. Okay, sorry. Something her mother, a painter, and a cancer researcher asked for on her deathbed 5 years ago. The plea has since become a mission. Please Remember Me is the title Robinson has assigned to her collection of nearly 3,000 artifacts. Oh yeah, which includes slave traders' journals, dolls that were handed to children after they were freed, and portraits she has painted herself. Okay, so I found a picture. I found this picture. We'll go back to that quilt and zoom in. Look at this. This is a picture from Skinner Auction Site. Skinner Auction Site, we have looked at many quilts that have been featured on Skinner Auction Site website. I mean, it's not something you might know about, but I've brought many quilts to this show that I've found there. So this, in 2018, they did an auction of items from the Avis and Eugene Robinson collection. Collection. Please Remember. And so in 2018, there was this big auction. You know, Skinner's like that's a big deal. You know, they're like a big name in the auction world. So Please Remember, the collection of Avis and Eugene Robinson is, you know, that's a significant collection. So they're talking in this article about this collection of nearly 3,000 artifacts, including slave traders' journals, dolls that were handed to children after they were freed, and portraits she painted herself. And I was going to save this to the end, but I'm not going to. This is her husband. Hang on. Yeah, this is her husband. Okay, I saw this. This was years ago. Look at the coronavirus pandemic numbers down there on in the corner. 444,981. This was MSNBC. Once again, don't like any of the mass media. I'm not telling you to watch MSNBC. But we were watching the news, flipping around, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And I saw this man talking. I saw this report. Oh, you see the Washington Post. Okay, so he's an associate editor at the Washington Post.
Yeah, he was a columnist for many, many years.
He's married to Avis. So it's totally a crack up over the Washington Post. But I saw this quilt behind him and I was like, oh my God. I was like, honey, there's a quilt. There's a quilt behind this man and he's on the Washington Post. I mean, he's on the television. And I remember, thinking that was so great, and I don't know what date this was, but you read him for years. Quilting Politic read him. Yeah, you remember seeing it. Maud Art Quilt remembers. Pepperidge Farm remembers. His first name is Eugene. Eugene Robinson. So Avis and Eugene are power players basically, and an artist and a writer, and I bet their life is just extremely cool, and I'm extremely jealous. But this is their collection, so pretty neat as we put these people together, right? This quilt is really cool. I'm gonna zoom in on it while I read to you a little bit more of this. We won't read the whole thing, but we'll read some more. Let's see. Some of Robinson's ancestors were slaves, but not all of them. Her heritage is a blend of black, white, and Nottoway Indian. She dislikes being labeled. That's the problem with DC, says the artist, going off the record whenever she feels she needs to swear. Everybody tries to put you in a box, but I don't go into a box. I love that. Instead, Robinson reads much like her patchwork quilts, the vibrant ones she made with fabrics she dyed on the kitchen stove in her Terra Leeway Heights home. At 59, now this was 10 years ago, so now she's 69 years old. At 59, she seems to study or do a bit of everything: history, economics, law, climate change, quilting, philanthropy, writing, painting, videography. This is an interesting quote. We'll talk about it. Yes, and her husband says, quote, she does them all with the same sort of passion and out of a commitment and highly original sensibility that is all Avis, unquote. That was Eugene. So they talk a little bit more about her. She took up quilting in her 20s, working for a time with Alabama G's Ben Quilters. And so she was down there working with them. And this quilt is in the National Museum of African American History. It's at the Smithsonian, and it's called In the Style of G's Bend. Wait a minute, hold on. I think I'm missing part of that. But part of the title is In the Style of G's Bend. It was made in 2008. And I think that's good, you know, because I mean the quilts from Gee's Bend and different quilts from different areas in the South and beyond, everyday quilts we call them, you know, that were made from materials that were used and reused and used up. You know, there are similarities in a lot of these quilts, and you know, there's nothing new under the sun. But I liked the way that in this quilt, in the title, she says, you know, in the style of Gee's Bend. The National Museum of African American History and Culture, I think maybe it is. But this is great. I saw the word corduroy in the chat. I think people are talking about corduroy. Isn't it wonderful, Wonky? It's so great. Hey, Lisa. Eugene Robinson often is a talking head on television in front of quilts. I love that. I think that's good. Sneaking quilts into the popular culture. So it looks woven. Someone said it looks, Babe said it looks woven. I'm pretty sure it's corduroy. I've got a picture of the back too. And then we'll look at the whole thing again. All my things are weird. Okay, yeah. The binding is great. So simple quilting, straight line, you know, horizontal lines. And I think, let me grab this really quick because I didn't give you this. Avis Robinson. Yeah, I'll get the link. Here we go. It's called Sharecropper's Masterpiece. That's what it's called. Sharecropper's Masterpiece. And it says this modified strip quilt with 9 blocks was pieced by Avis Collins Robinson in the style of Gee's Bend, Alabama quilts. It was quilted by Minzie Lee Petway. Wow, interesting. And Andrea Petway Williams. So the quilters down in Gee's Bend, 2 of them. The quilt top is comprised of 9 blocks in rows and columns of 3. Each block is formed from asymmetrical strips of fabric with the blocks sewn together so that the strips are oriented in alternating vertical and horizontal directions. The strips are made from pieces of corduroy and velvet in the shades of red, pink, purple, and white. There's a border along the left-facing side in dark purple velvet and a wider border along the right-facing side in dark purple, in the right-facing side in red corduroy. The quilt is backed with solid red cotton, plain weave, chartreuse velvet, pink corduroy, and bright purple corduroy on the binding. Describing that. Yep. Made in 2008. Yeah. Yeah, and it was given to the museum in 2015. Yeah, and here's the link for it, Steph, in case anybody wants that. I'll just put it in the Slack. Okay. So pretty neat. And then I think I think that's it. That's what I had to show you for Avis Collins Robinson. I just think this quilt is amazing. I think it's really, really beautiful. And I wanted to share it with you. Cool. And so, okay, so that is, I've got one other news story, and then we'll take a cake break, and then come back and we'll do the NPR story, which is really interesting and sort of led me down an interesting path. Hang on, did I get that? No, I didn't. Okay, we're going to go to the cake break now. That's what we're going to do. I'm so versatile, and so are you. Are you ready for a little surprise? I made you a new thing.
Sure, yes.
Okay, let's go to this cake break, and let's see what we got. Okay, I got to hide myself. Okay. See, look.
Uh-oh.
Look, the cake break. Reminders, show news, and the Dutton report. And it's animated. You see, it pops up. It's got all the little... I'm so proud of myself that I made an animation. So, okay.
Oh, it's so cute.
You are welcome.
The Dutton report.
The Dutton report.
So, of course, I somehow managed to close all my Dutton stuff.
Well, you've got a second to get it back, because I'm going to say hi to Karen and to remind everybody that, when I come back, we're going to talk about a giveaway. A very, very, it's not just any giveaway. It's like extra fancy giveaway. Seriously. Like I'm just going to throw it out. I'm just going to say the word Verloop. Verloop. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to throw it out there. The Verloop company has been on the show before, and they reached out to ask if we wanted to do a giveaway. And I'm going to talk about that giveaway when I get back. And I'm just giving you a little taste. Okay, now, Cake, you take it away. But I was giving you a little time to get your stuff. Did you get it?
Thank you. I did.
Okay, good.
I did.
Okay, bye. I'll be right back.
All right. So, you guys, like I said, I'm a little fuzzy around the corners because I've been reading a lot of Dutton, and I've actually been reading his textbooks instead of his manuscript, because I think it's kind of given me. I feel like it's given me like sort of a different perspective on him to read all of these different. I think I'd feel differently about him if I hadn't read both his quilting books and his textbooks, if that makes sense. So what I mentioned the other day was this quote I really liked by him, but I couldn't remember where it was from. So I wanted to actually read it to you because I remembered where it was from. And it is the beginning of his textbook, Reconstruction Therapy, that was written in 1919. And I dare you to find anything else from 1919 that you might agree with. So this is, I'm guessing, and again, I'm not an occupational therapist, but I do know that they still reference his work. So I don't know if this is something that's still part of what they, what they stand for. But this is listed as the credo: that occupation is as necessary to life as food and drink, that every human being should have both physical and mental occupation, that all should have occupations which they enjoy, or hobbies. These are the more necessary when the vocation is dull or distasteful. Every individual should have at least 2 hobbies, one outdoor and one indoor. A great number will create wider interests, a broader intelligence. That sick minds, sick bodies, sick souls may be healed through occupation. So I thought that was really beautiful. Taking it out of this kind of clinical context, I just thought that's I don't know. I mean, that's really just a wonderful mindset to have. And, those of us that do quilt and do sew a lot kind of for our own mental and, physical health to take your mind off of stuff or to get away from things or to relax. I thought that was really great. And let's see. One thing that I wanted to mention, at the very beginning of this textbook, and actually you can get this textbook on Google Library if you have a burning desire to read it. I also have I put a copy of it out in my Dutton folder that I shared with everybody. But on the dedication page, it doesn't say dedication. It just has these 2 Latin words. And I took Latin in high school and of course could not remember. I knew one of these was my. So it's mea or mei. So it's MEAE. And then the second word is conjugi, CONJUGI, and that means my wife. So, I'm still looking for information about his wife. I can't stop thinking about her. She may or may not have anything to do with quilts, but she is such a mystery, I guess. So hopefully I could find something about her within the next couple of weeks. I'm going to hopefully go to the archives and to find out about her, because I know where she was born. And I think I mentioned I know the date she died, but I don't know where she's buried. I could not find a death certificate or a cause of death or anything. So, but she was his first wife. So in any event, I suspect looking at some of his earlier work, particularly his scrapbooks from the 20s and 30s, there's some different handwriting in there. And I'm 99% sure it was probably his wife. She was collecting things for him and pasting them in, unless he had a patient do it. Now, this is something really interesting. As I was reading some of his where he's talking about helping people find their occupation, he mentioned a woman who and if you've listened to some of the, yes, Cake is his third wife. If you listen to some of the things that I've talked about with him, he talks, he refers to women, these women that were his patients, they're depressed and they suffer from anxiety, but he refers to them as his nervous ladies.
Nervous ladies.
He's got this sort of paternalistic approach in some cases, but again, you also have to think it's the time,
Sure,
or turn of the century. But he talks about having helped this woman find a thing that brought her like calm and peace, and it was folding paper. And he had correspondence that he had to fold, and he would bring it to her and she'd fold it. And so I kind of wonder, and he had also mentioned that, pasting things into scrapbooks and that kind of thing was also an option. And it's interesting. I think that at the Wild and Untamed show at the Maryland Historical Society's museum, I want to say they said something about there was some place where they had said something about patients doing things like gluing things in scrapbooks and folding papers, and that he said that was not good enough, that it needed to be more stimulating. But I thought I had to laugh when he talked about this paper folding thing, and that when he tried to divert her to something else like cross stitching or embroidery, she did not fare well. She wanted to fold paper, and I was like, Dutton, why didn't you find some origami books? Like, this lady would have been fantastic at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I guess, or turn of the century. I mean, I know that they were very interested in sort of, in the Victorian era, they were interested in sort of that exotic Oriental culture. But so I don't know if something like, origami would have made it to the U.S. But in any event, it was just very touching the way, even though he took this kind of paternalistic approach to his patients, I really think he was a very, very good-hearted person. Yeah.
It seems like he. Oh. Yeah. I mean, he's a good one. Dutton's a good. I mean, I feel like that. Mm-hmm. I really need him to be. I need him to be good. Please be good.
So from everything I have found, he was absolutely beloved. People loved him so much. And the things that I've read that he has said or written that I kind of like cringe a little bit. It's, again, we have to look at things through his lens versus our lens of that time. Again, not that it excuses.
Right. It doesn't make it
one way or
okay,
another,
but we're also saying terrible things that we will learn about later. I mean,
exactly.
It's just kind of that way.
100 years from now. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, he was just a good dude. And like I said, born 100 years too late. He might be my second husband had he been born in 1968.
I feel like that you guys totally would have enjoyed each other. I mean, you would have hung out, right? Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, if nothing, he would have been like your number one quilt nerd.
Totally.
He would be like tier 3 for life.
He'd be tier 3 for life. He'd be tier 3 for life, 1,000%. In fact, you know what So, okay, do you have anything else before I go on to this? Yeah,
it was just two last things. So, I show news and reminders. Yeah. Remember to submit, as Robin has explained to you, if you want to have your quilt in the parade. Yep. And please subscribe if you haven't already. And for those of you that did the recurring September subscriptions, it's only been 6 months. I do owe you guys something, and you will be getting an email from me. So do not despair. And then finally, I actually did copy, while I was at the Dutton collection, I copied a few little goodies that I thought people would like to look at. That's little catalogs.
That's great.
So I'm going to put them out in a folder, and I'll put a link on the Disco.
I love that. That's awesome. And I did not mean to cut you off if you were not done with the Dutton report. I hope I did not do that.
No, I was just sort of rambling. I mean, I love him so much.
And I hope that you'll do the AQSG, the study center. I mean, I really do. If anybody's out there who wants to present at AQSG at the American Quilt Study Group seminar in October, April, the deadline's coming up to submit your thing. What's the worst that can happen? They can say, you know what, not this year, but do it. Whatever, do it.
And for those of you that are members and are maybe thinking about it or just want to learn more, they're having this weekend, I think it's Sunday, they're having like a little Zoom call about, kind of talking to people about presenting, doing
I'm going to watch that.
Presentation, like all that stuff. And I think they also did one about 6 months ago.
Yes.
And so that recording is up. If you go search the website, you can find it.
Yep. I love that.
I love that. Good stuff.
It's good stuff. Okay, so there's a lot going on. So let me tell you about this. So do you remember, people, I don't know, was it like a month and a half ago? A couple months ago. It was a couple months ago now. I showed on the show, we did like a gift roundup or like cool stuff on the internet, that's for sale, that's quilt-like. Imagine that. And I showed you this company's wares. Verloop was their name. Verloop. And we were all about their stuff because their stuff rules. And so they have knit things like, I don't know, this cool blanket that is in a quilt, pattern, but is knitted. It has been knitted together. Verloop is amazing. And I happen to know that your host and the bakery, including cake, biscuit, and pie, we all received a gift from Verloop. Well, we received a gift of Verloop goods, and that was awesome. That was very, very cool. And I can tell you, and Cake, you can say too, you can tell it too. It's amazing, right? Your product from Verloop.
Soft. Oh. Yes, they are so soft, and yes, it's I always think like I love knitted things, but you think knitted things that are like out of non-natural fibers are always kind of like no, this stuff is like. Whoa, really? That's recycled whatever? I don't know what it is. Recycled
like unicorns, recycled unicorns, I think is what it is. Yeah. This is it's actually
really gorgeous and soft.
It's really gorgeous and soft. And the actual and this is the actual one that I have. I have the blanket. Susanna has a scarf, a beautiful knit scarf. And Robin I found a pillow found its way to Robin, and you also got a throw.
And a blanket found its way to Stephanie. Yes,
and I believe it's this one. Isn't that the way that that's yours?
It's the other. Yeah, that one.
It's that one. It's so good. It's a great style shop, Verloop. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so why would I be bringing this up again? For what reason? Well, not only. Oh, Robin, I think this is your pillow, isn't it? The reason that I bring it up is because Verloop reached out to us, and probably they reached out to us being the Quilt Nerds, because someone let them know that we talked about them on the show. And I don't know who that is. Do we know who that is? I'm not sure. I have my guesses. Do we know?
I'm not 100%, but I see JB bought a scarf. So I'm thinking a number of you did buy things.
Well, I'm so happy to hear it. And I will say, there are some of these products that I'm showing you are on sale, but they are not cheap. They are, because they're wonderful. Look at this. Look at this little muffin. Look at it. This scamp. This little scamp with his little checkerboard thing. There are some items on sale, but they are quality goods. Anyway. So somebody let Verloop know that they were featured on the show, and we got the most delightful email from them. They reached out to us, or maybe it was an Instagram thing, and they said, "Thank you so much for featuring us on your show. We think you're great." I don't know if they said that, but I assume. And they said, "Would you like, we would like to offer a giveaway product for your Quilt Nerd show." I mean, oh my God. That is the company that is Verloop. So here's the deal. Here's what's going to happen. Now, I love everybody. I love the viewers on Twitch. I love the viewers on YouTube and Facebook. I love my tier 1 subscribers. I love everybody. But I got to tell you, those tier 2 and tier 3 subscribers, y'all are solid. You're solid. So the Verloop giveaway, which is blanket, right? A blanket and a pillow? There's two, I think. Oh God!
It's both.
It's both.
There's two things.
There's a blanket and there's a pillow. Yes, that's right. There's a blanket and there's a pillow.
The pie has handled this, and the pie is in the future, so we're not really sure.
Pie is in Q8, so yes, exactly. She's in the future. She knows. She's been working with Verloop, but yeah, there's two items, right? So there's a pillow and a blanket, and I gotta give it up to the tier 2 and tier 3 subscribers, y'all. This is for you. I mean, this is like the best giveaway. It's so great. Look at this thing. This blanket, this actual blanket, I mean, not the one that she had. Maybe it's the one she has in this thing. I don't know. Maybe they're giving us samples. I don't know. No, but it is so great. And so the tier 2 and tier 3 folks, you've earned it. You are the best. And so on a Sunday social in April, the Sunday social in April, I'm going to do a drawing, 2 drawings for these items. And the thing is, so with the subscriptions, I'll just do this briefly. I want to get onto the other thing too, the last bit of the show. But there's these different tiers, for subscribing on Twitch, and they're all helpful, right? Tier 2 and tier 3. Tier 2, $9.99 a month. And I don't have any secrets. I get half of that amount, right? Twitch has to do all of the magic that makes the show broadcast to you right now, so I can't do any of that. So we're glad that they have money to do that. I get half of a subscription price, whatever. And so $9.99 a month and $24.99 a month at tier 3. that's amazing that you would support the show in that way, and that I would be able to have that income for all of this. You know what I mean? So I appreciate everybody, and I think that the tier 2 and tier 3 subscribers, like, I want to give you something like a little bit extra, you know? And because, I mean, one day there will be thousands of you. But today, and in April, there's not thousands of you. So, you know, your chances of, you know, getting one of these things is pretty good. So if you're not a tier 2 or tier 3 subscriber, perhaps you will consider upgrading. You know, I don't know. Just try it out. See what you think. Because each month I do a special stream, the Sunday Social, for the tier 2 and tier 3 people. And it's really cool. It's like it's a private stream. It's really fun. And we do different things. And I'm going to do a demo or something, I think, maybe next month I'll do it. So there's a Sunday Social this Sunday at 11 a.m. on Sunday, and we get together, and like I said, we do different stuff, but it's really a good time. And you get, like, I don't know, special scoops. Sometimes I talk about my personal life, things I wouldn't share, you know, on the regular internet. I don't know. But we just, it's a nice vibe, you know, it's a little different from the regular show. So you get to do that. And now you're going to be in this giveaway, and I don't know, I write you little notes and things. You know, I have to make sure I've sent everybody notes. Anyway, and it supports the show. And you don't have to watch ads if you subscribe at any level. So anyway, that is as good as I can do on the sales thing. Verloop, we love you. You're amazing. It's so cool that you're going to donate a pillow and a blanket. And so next month on the Sunday Social, which is on April 30th, I'm going to do the Verloop giveaway. And I think that's pretty awesome. Oh, Dee Dee Brucker says, oh, I love the Sunday Social so much. Oh, I'm so glad. Dee Dee, thank you so much. Because, like, I don't know, we do different stuff. How can I describe it? It's intimate, you know? It's an intimate gathering.
You never know who's going to be there and what's going to be said.
It's true. Oh, my God. I mean, sometimes I spill the tea, people. I spill the tea. Wait, no, that's not what I want. Yeah. There's tea. There's always tea to spill. But I would
also add one last thing about Verloop.
Please.
It appears that they do collections. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is one current collection with these quilt designs. But I've seen past collections that were also really, they weren't quilt oriented, but they were really cute and fun. So keep an eye on them, because I think they do put this stuff on sale when they move on to a new collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be it might be an opportunity to, obviously see something new, but maybe when they move to the new collection, these things will be still available.
Exactly. And again, like, what I meant to say, the last thing I'll say is that when I went to LA for the Skirball show, which we broadcast live for subscribers from the Cultural Center, that amazing quilt exhibit a couple weeks ago with my mom. That's the kind of thing, right? That's the kind of thing you get when you subscribe, and you don't have to watch ads. Anyway, so, and you can only do it on Twitch. But the other thing is I take a blanket with me. This is the thing. This is a little travel tip from a gal who's traveled a lot in her life for work and other things. But I take a throw blanket. I like a thin throw blanket to take with me in my suitcase. I make room for it because those hotel rooms, sometimes they're cold, but they can often be cold just in a psychic sense, right? And I like a throw blanket because you get home from the thing you're doing or whatever, or you have time for a nap, you want a throw. A quilt isn't always, I know, it's like, but I took this with me. I took the throw blanket. I took it with me because it's thin enough, but it's warm enough. It was perfect. I took it with me, and it was there, and I love it so much. Okay? There you go. So, tier 2 and tier 3, God bless you. I love you a lot. Thank you so much. The thing I'll tell you before we listen to this last thing is this. Next week, on Saturday, we're going to look at some quilts in this book, okay? This book is, it was published in 1990-something, right? And what's weird is that Mary Kay Waldvogel signed this book. She's everywhere. Cake and I were talking about it. 1990, okay, Publications International. Oh my God, Publications International. That company, I wrote for that company. That was like my first freelance job when I got to Chicago. I wrote like The Amazing Book of Dogs and like weird publication. Wow, that's totally weird. Publications International. Anyway, Mary Kay Waldvogel, I believe, wrote the copy in this book, but was not credited. See, look, quilt making in America. Mary Kay, if you're watching, it's very possible that you are. Mary Kay Waldvogel. Look, Quilt Making in America by Mary Kay Waldvogel. So, I mean, I didn't get credited in Publication International Books either, because it's like, I don't know, it's like some... Anyway, there are really interesting quilts in this book. That's the point. And I want to talk about some of them. So I'm going to scan in some really interesting quilts that are in this book. Oh, I got to charge my phone or I'm going to lose cake. Okay. But they're very interesting. And I want to talk about, wow, some of the quilts that are in here. And I have such a large library. One of the things you get when you watch the show is, access to this crazy huge quilt library that I have. So it's not the whole show, but I'm gonna show you some interesting quilts. And one of the things we do is that we talk about design. We sort of analyze the design in certain quilts. And if it doesn't sound like it'd be that interesting, you just wait to see what the people who watch this show have to say about the different design elements of quilts. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Okay, that's what I think. All right, so I am going to plug in my phone so we don't lose Stephanie, and we're going to listen to a little piece on NPR that was aired yesterday, I believe. Here is that piece. It's 3 minutes, and we're going to listen to it, and I'm going to show you a few pictures, including the picture of this quilt, and we're going to hear from somebody that we know, Marcia McDowell, who was featured on this episode of All Things Considered. And this piece is called "A Quilt Gives a Peek into Detroit's Black Bottom Neighborhood Decades Ago." This was published yesterday, or aired yesterday, on NPR on All Things Considered. Okay, let's take a listen. Let me make sure this is good. Okay. Cool. Here we go.
In Detroit, the neighborhood of Black Bottom thrived as a center of African American life in the first half of the 20th century. Then the construction of a highway and government-mandated redevelopment all but wiped the neighborhood out. But a recently discovered quilt is providing a peek into what life in Black Bottom was like more than 50 years ago. Sophia Salaby of member station WKAR in East Lansing reports.
It might have been a simple quilt, but the minute Marcia McDowell saw it in an online sale, she knew it had to come home to Michigan. Quilted in blue and white fabric, the design includes 20 X-shaped blocks. Embroidered on each are names like Sister Roberta Wilson and Mrs. Molly Mason, along with addresses and telephone numbers. As someone who grew up in Detroit, the Michigan State University Museum, curator of folk arts and quilt studies, recognized the street names.
It is in a location where urban renewal in the 1960s pretty much took down every residential building. And if you go on Google Map, what you see are vacant lots.
One of the few buildings still standing is the Zion Congregational Church of God in Christ on Mack Avenue. The nearly century-old church is near what was once Detroit's Black Bottom neighborhood. The community, which grew from African Americans migrating from the South, included dozens of Black-owned businesses and a well-known music and nightclub scene. In 2021, McDowell decided to post photos of the quilt to a church Facebook page.
We were flooded with responses that I know this person, this is my mother, this is my aunt, this is a person I knew in the Zion church.
Someone who saw that post got in contact with Rether Quinn to share the news. They had recognized the name of her mother, Adele Anderson, on the quilt.
The most exciting thing for me was to know that some artifact that my mother had been a part of still existed.
Quinn, who's in her 90s now, remembers her mother being involved in a sewing circle with other women of the church. She's positive the quilt was made for a fundraiser sometime in the 40s.
She found her niche when the sewing circle started. She was always making something and having us do embroidery.
A year after that first post, in April of last year, McDowell worked with leaders of the church to bring together people like Quinn to reflect on their close-knit community. Quinn called it a reunion of sorts. They remembered the sewing circles, the women who ran them, and how church life wasn't just about church.
How we were old enough to sneak out of the services and go to the candy store.
McDowell says the quilt is more than just a blanket or even a piece of folk art. It's a piece of history.
This quilt is a textual document of what was a thriving neighborhood and a thriving relationship amongst those individuals whose names were inscribed on the quilt.
Marcia Music is a current member of the congregation. She says it's significant the women of the church put their names on the quilt.
There was a part of them that wanted to make sure it was known that we made this, and it has stood the test of time.
McDowell is continuing to dig into the origins of the quilt and its creators and hopes to use recently released census data to learn more. For NPR News, I'm Sophia Salaby in East Lansing.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear.
I'm Jack Spear. So the images you're seeing.
That is so cool.
Yeah,
that is so cool. I love that.
It's so cool, right? It's so cool. And like we see, and so I grabbed pictures of Detroit's Black Bottom neighborhood from that era before it was raised to make a highway. And like, look, oh my gosh, look at this dishy girl. She's so like cute and like doing the, oh my God, it's just great. So all of the images you see are from that neighborhood. Look, Duke Ellington and his orchestra on stage and in person, amazing. So these are just really interesting images. And so like I told you at the top of the show, this story about the signature quilt, which it don't look like much, right? Like, I mean, you see these signature quilts in flea markets and things, and you know, without the eye to understand what you're looking at. And I mean, I don't know what I'm looking at most of the time, you know, so I don't know. This is really a piece of history. I mean, they have their addresses on this quilt.
You know, and it's interesting because they're, you know, people do love these signature quilts because they do speak to a community, whether it's a church congregation or a neighborhood or whatever. Mm-hmm. But this is like that Rosie Lee Tompkins who had the quilt with, I mean, it was like her phone number.
Yeah. It was good call. Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm like that drive to do that. I mean, it's almost like you want to put your mark out there somehow. And that sometimes this kind of, you know, quote unquote document. I mean, that's what this is. It's a document.
It's totally.
This is the way to do it. You know.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I mean, because a quilt can be used in a way, you know, by many people, it's like you could argue that it's more likely that it'll last, you know, more than like a drawer of papers in a family home. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And this is nicer than carving your name on a desk or a wall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. It just makes me think of something. I said to Eric, because you know, you're doing this research, I'm doing this research. You know, we're looking for papers and archives and things, and he said, I said, you know, it's probably going to be easier, you know, for people who are doing this stuff to find things because everything's digitized. And Eric said, actually, no, that paper, that over time it's going to be too bad because systems, you know, this. I mean, systems go out of fashion, they crash, you know, digital archives may not actually be as hardy as paper, but anyway, that's a side note. But yeah, the quilt remains, you know. And Marcia McDowell, who is incredible, and I printed out some information on her because I mean, Marcia McDowell is okay. Marcia McDowell, who found this quilt, who was featured on this and has done work on this quilt. PhD, is a professor and curator at Michigan State University Museum. She's director of the Michigan Traditional Arts Program and the Quilt Index, right? We've talked about the Quilt Index and used the Quilt Index on this program. It's a very big deal, quiltindex.org. She has published extensively on folk arts and quilts, including African American quilting in Michigan, and is currently heading an international effort funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities to increase African diasporic quilting content in the Quilt Index. Quiltindex.org. I mean, this is an incredible resource, and we've used it on the show before. I want to use it more. I need to. I used it the other day, actually, in my research. So Marcia McDowell is really special, and if you have the Michigan issue of Quilt Folk, you should look at it and read the story about the Quilt Index and the women at MSU who do such great work there. But yeah, I mean, cool, right? Like if you have signature quilts, I don't know, we have a top for the Quilt Folk project, the Quilt Folk Foundry, and there's signatures on it, and there's a backwards N on it. So I'll take a picture of that and show you. But I don't know who those people are. But it's tough because it's like you could find out. Because if you put all those people, if you searched for all those names, you could figure out. It's a treasure trove of information, right?
Yeah, Word Nerd has actually done that.
Really?
She has a quilt that she bought, and I'm trying to think. It's one of those ones that's kind of like a circular where they look like spokes of a wheel. It's really cool looking, but I think that's hers.
Oh,
but in any event,
yeah,
she has done that because, she's a big genealogist, and she's done a bunch of research and found who this community was.
Wow.
And I think it was church oriented.
Probably a lot of them were, right? But look at this picture. This was Black Bottom. They said it was the Wall Street of Detroit, the Black Wall Street of Detroit. And, it's gone. It's gone, and it's interesting. So quilts take us everywhere. They teach us about American history, about Detroit, about so many things. And I love that so much. I feel really grateful for quilts, that I have quilts in my life, because for that reason. Like, of course, the quilts are beautiful. Of course, we love to look at the art. Avis Robinson is making a quilt, once a season for publication in the Washington Post, and it's amazing and it's so beautiful, and we can talk about the design elements and how we would make something, or how we would dissect something. But then it's this history, and so I really love coming here. I mean, I come here like you come here. I do a little more prep work than you do, right? That's pretty much it, because otherwise we're just looking at stuff together, and I love it so much. And I really appreciate you, and I've gotten to know some of you, and I hope to get to know more of you, and I just really love Quilt Nerd, and I thank you for watching the show tonight. And on Saturday we're gonna look at some amazing stuff, and then a week from tonight we're gonna look at your stuff. So Robin's got the information posted there if you want to have a quilt or a project on the show, and it doesn't have to be like finished, and it doesn't have to be good. You can send whatever you're working on. I mean, whatever you're working on. Oh, and by the way, the Quilt Folk Foundry, quiltfolk.com/foundry. Another quilt sold. Roxanne sold. So if you're interested in one of the founders, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. So Robin's making the bags that the Quilt Folk Foundry quilts come in. If you don't know about that project, go to quiltfolk.com/foundry. I'm the creative director of the program. So far, 7 quilts out of 12 have sold, and it's just been 3 days. So is that right? Launched on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Okay, 4 days. But it's cool. So I get to make more quilts and stuff, which is great. So learn about it and pick up a quilt. Oh my God, that's an avocado. What the hell is that? Why? I've never seen that before. Amy Pabst, thank you so much. Oh my God, you chose to continue your gift subscription. Amy Pabst, thank you so much. That scared the hell out of me. I don't remember programming an avocado. But I love it so much. It's great. Okay, Amy, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're gonna stick around. I have a good feeling about you. I think you're gonna be around for a while. I hope so. Okay, that's all. I'm bad at saying goodbye. Thanks, Amy, and thanks to all my subscribers. I'll see you on Saturday. And thanks, Kenny, for gifting that in the first place. Okay, bye, everybody. Bye, Cake.
Bye.